Welcome everyone to this live podcast on Twitch where you can find the news from the research industry that how our researchers keep on researching on various topics and domains. So it's going and uh, and yes, this article is posted on our website named postscientist.com. So if you are willing to check it out, please check it out. Otherwise, listening to this podcast will be enough for you guys. And yeah, so without wasting any further time, let's get started with the first topic of the day. New system retrofit diesel engine to run on 90% hydrogen. Okay, let's see. Engineer from UNSW Sydney have successfully converted a diesel engine to run as a hydrogen diesel hybrid engine, reducing CO2 emission by more than 85% in the progress. The team, led by the Professor Sean Cook from the School of Mechanical and Manufacturing Engineering, spent around 18 months developing the hydrogen diesel direct injection dual fuel system. That means exciting diesel engine can run using 90% hydrogen as fuel. The researcher says that any diesel engine used in trucks and power equipment in the transportation, agriculture, and mining industries could ultimately be retrofitted to the new hybrid system in just a couple of months. Green hydrogen, which is produced using clean renewable energy sources such as wind and solar, is much more environmentally friendly than diesel. And in a paper published in the International Journal of Hydrogen Energy, Professor Cook team shows that using their patent hydrogen injection system reduces CO2 emission to just 90 gram kilowatt per hour, 85.9% below the amount produced by the diesel powered engine. Hmm. This new technology significantly reduces CO2 emission from exciting diesel engines, so it could play a big part in making our carbon footprint much smaller, of course, especially in Australia with all our mining, agriculture, and other heavy industries where diesel engines are widely used, says Professor Cook. Hmm. We have shown that we have take those exciting diesel engines and convert them into cleaner engines that burn hydrogen fuel, being able to retrofit diesel engines that are already out there in much quicker than waiting for the development of completely new fuel cell system that might not be commercially available at a large scale for at least a decade. Hmm. With the problem of carbon emission and climate change, we need some more immediate solution to deal with the issues of these many diesel engines currently in use. High pressure hydrogen direct injection. The UNSW team solution to this problem maintains the original diesel injection into the engine but adds a hydrogen fuel injection directly into the cylinder. Okay. The collaborative research performed with Dr. Sean Chan and Professor Evert Hawkes found that specifically timed hydrogen direct injection controls the mixture condition inside the cylinder of this engine, which resolves harmful nitrogen oxide emission that have been a major hurdle for commercialization of hydrogen engines. If you just put hydrogen into the engine and let it all mix together, you will get a lot of nitrogen oxide NOx emissions, which is a significant cause of air pollution and acid rain, Professor Cook says. But we have shown in our system if you make it stratified, that is in some areas there is more hydrogen and in other engines there is less hydrogen, then we reduce the NOx emission below that of a purely diesel engine. Importantly, the new hydrogen diesel direct injection dual fuel system does not require extremely high purity hydrogen, which must be used in alternative hydrogen fuel cell system and is more expensive to produce. And compared to exciting diesel engine, and efficiency improvement of more than 26% have been shown in the diesel hydrogen hybrid. That improved efficiency is achieved by independent control of hydrogen direct injection timing as well as diesel injection timing, enabling full control of combustion modes, premix or mixing control hydrogen combustion. The research team hope to be able to commercialize the new system in the next 12 to 24 months and are keen to consult with prospective investors. They say the most immediate potential use of for their new technology is in industrial location where permanent hydrogen fuel supply lines are already in place. That includes mining sites where studies have shown that about 30% of greenhouse gas emissions are caused by the use of diesel engines, largely in mining, largely in mining vehicles and power generators. And the Australian market for diesel only power generator is currently estimated to be worth around $765 million company. Sorry, $1 million. At mining site where the hydrogen is piped in, we can convert the exciting diesel engines that are used to generate power, says Professor Cook, in terms of the application where the hydrogen fuel would need to be stored and moved around. For example, in a truck engine that currently runs purely on diesel, then we would also need to implement a hydrogen storage system to be integrated into our injection system. I do think the general technology with regards to mobile hydrogen storage needs to be developed further because at the moment that is a quite a challenge. Of course, it's a requirement in the industry and in the market. So it's basically providing you the solution to those kind of answers, to those kind of to those kinds of questions. Yes. So yes, every developing or developed countries need to be shifting their economy or shifting their fuel consumption into more sustainable way for less carbon emission or less carbon footprint. And yes, of course, we all know diesel is the most combustible um combustion fuel fuel engine and have some of the impurities, but still it's have less carbon emission than any other so yeah, and yes, of course, it if it's combined with the hydrogen, then it's going to be reduce more emission. Of course. Okay, moving on towards next topic. Underwater movement sensor can sound the alarm when a swimmer might be drowning. Okay, let's see. Many flexible fitness trackers can't be submerged in water because the coatings required to completely seal these devices would make them uncomfortable to wear. Of course, now researchers reporting in ACS Nano have applied a thin slippery coating to conducting fabric, creating a breathable underwater movement sensor. They integrated the sensor into a smart device that wirelessly alerts a smartphone app when a swimmer stops moving, an indication that they could be drowning. Underwater movement sensor could have many applications such as monitoring heart rate and tracking swimmers' activity and safety. However, current methods to protect these electronics make the device thick and impermeable to air, which could lead to skin irritation. Previous research, though, has shown that thin, even layers of polydimethylsiloxane (PDMS) provide enough water repulsion to protect flexible movement sensor underwater, but it's unclear whether the coating could be comfortable. So, Jia Young Huang Chio Limin Park Yukun Lai and colleagues wanted to test PDMS as a water repellent coating for a fabric based sensor that could be a part of a wireless underwater movement detection system. To do this, the researcher dipped a piece of polyester kinet fabric into a graphene oxide solution and then into a iodic acid. The last immersion was into a solution containing PDMS, microparticles, and nanoparticles. Initial tests showed that the coated fabric was conductive and water repellent, yet still permeable to air, suggesting that the material would be comfortable to wear. When a sample of the coated fabric was attached to a person's finger that was the bent was then bent while underwater, it produced a measurable electrical response. The team combined the fabric-based sensor with a power supply and a data collector to create a smart underwater movement system that could wirelessly transfer the electrical response to a smartphone app. When the smart device was attached to a motorized swimming doll, the app tracked the doll's kicking leg. To simulate a swimmer in distress, the doll kicking motion was turned off and the app sent a red warning message. The researcher did because the smart movement sensor repels water, it could help monitor swimmers' safety and be used in other types of underwater sensors. Of course. So, I mean, great, great, great discovery, great innovation. So, yep. Moving on towards next topic. Info expected to emerge slowly in hospital chain cyber attack. Oh, okay. Let's see. Details of an apparent cyber attack on one of the largest health system in the US were slow to emerge as security experts on Friday warned that it often takes time to assess the full impact on patients and hospitals. Earlier this week, Common Spirit Health confirmed it experienced as IT security issue, but it has yet to answer detailed question about the incident, including how many of its 1,000 care sites that serve 20 million Americans may have been affected. The health system giant, which is the second largest non-profit health system in America, has 140 hospitals in 21 states. It actually takes a while to fully know the scope because you're in the middle of trying to restore all your systems, said Alan Liska, an analyst with the cybersecurity firm Recorded Future. You're trying to pay to a patient care up and running. You're trying to get your nurses and your doctors back to the system they need. Healthcare organizations are an appealing target for cyber attackers, particularly those who use malware to lock up a victim organization files and leverage the information for a payment. Ransomware has remained a persistent threat for the industry, which is among the 16 sectors the US government classifies as critical infrastructure. Ransomware attackers actors known that's going to cause a lot of disruption, Liska said. Of course, healthcare system in 2021 saw an unusual high amount of attacks with 285 publicly reported worldwide, Liska added. So far, Liska firm has tracked 155 this year with an average of 20 attacks happening a month. However, he estimated that only about 10% of ransomware attacks are publicized. Cybersecurity experts said years of work have built healthcare leaders trust in the FBI and other federal agencies focused on cybercrime. An FBI spokesperson declined to comment on whether they are investigating the Common Spirit Health cyber attack. John Riggi, the American Hospital Association National Advisor for Cybersecurity and Risk, said he could not discuss Common Spirit specifically. In general, through he said it can take days, weeks, or more to discover how an attacker gained access, determine what damage has been done, and prevent further harm. Regi was spent nearly 13 years with the FBI, called a significant cyber attack on an hospital a potential risk to patient safety, and said the US government takes that seriously. Their goal, he said, is to identify the attacker and make their identity and methodology public. They don't want to show their hand and what they know about the bad guys, he said. You are really processing a crime scene in a real time, of course. But these are risks to victims of cyber attacks who fail to communicate their response plan and strategy for recovery, said Mike Hamilton, the Chief Information Security Officer with Critical Insight Cybersecurity in Washington State. The reaction of patient staff and affiliated healthcare operations to the chain handling of the incidents all could affect the company's future survival, he said. Here's how close we are to resolution. Here's why we are diverting here, and are the other hospitals we are partnering with. Hamilton said they need to be sure they are communicating because so many people are being impacted by this. Of course. So there is an ransomware attack by the attackers or the actors, whatever, by the attacker, of course. So there is a possibility of risk for the potential risk for the patient health or uh, patient settings or patient reports. So yep, I mean, of course, information has been leaked or ransomware has been successful for the attackers. So it's going to be interesting thing. So yeah, moving on towards next topic. Achieving photovoltaic power generation for over 1000 continuous hours efficiency more than 20%. Okay. NIMS have developed a durable 1 centimeter square perovskite solar cell capable of generating electricity for more than 1000 continuous hours at a photoelectric conversion efficiency, that is power generation efficiency of more than 20% in exposure to sunlight. Because these solar cells can be fabricated on the surface of a plastic material at approximately 100 degrees Celsius. This technique may be used to develop light versatile solar cells. Solar cells have been a vital component of decarbonization policies, making them the subject of the intense research around the globe. Perovskite solar cells are a potentially promising next generation solar cell technology because they can be produced more easily and at lower cost than conventional solar cells. However, perovskite solar cells also have disadvantages. They are prone to degradation when they react with water molecules, and it had proven difficult to make them both durable and highly efficient. Okay, most perovskite solar cells have a similar power generation mechanism. When the perovskite layer absorbs sunlight, it generates electrons and holes. Of course, these electron and holes then migrate separately into the adjacent electron transport layer and hole transport layer respectively, where they flow to produce an electrical current. Of course, to simultaneously improve the efficiency and durability of perovskite solar cells, the layers and the interface between them need to be enable electrons and holes to move through them more freely while rendering the interfaces impermeable to water molecules. Hmm. This research team added a hydrazine derivative containing water repellent fluorine atoms 5F PHZ to the interface between the electron transport layer and the perovskite layer, composed of a crystalline structure Fa 0.84, Cs 0.12, Rb 0.04, PBL3, which has been expressed simply by the ABX3, of course, where capital A combination of formadium ions Fa plus, Cs plus ions, and Rb plus ions, and B Pb2 plus ions, and Z equals to 1 minus electron, of course. This interface successfully prevented water molecules that have penetrated the electron transport layer from coming into contact with the perovskite layer, thereby improving the durability of the solar cells. The use of the interface also reduced the number of crystalline defects that form on the surface of the perovskite layer, a cause of decreased power generation efficiency. In addition, the team added a phosphonic acid derivative MEO2PACZ to the interface between the whole transport layer and the perovskite layer, which minimized defect in formation in the whole transport layer and thereby improved the power generation efficiency of of the solar cells. The study is published in Advanced Energy Materials. In future research, the team plans to develop even more efficient and durable perovskite solar cell by creating a database of molecules that can be integrated into the interface, conducting data-driven research, and designing molecules that can be used to improve interfacial properties. Of course. Okay, moving on towards next topic. Method to fabricate eco-friendly Absorbents for heavy metal ion removal by 3D printing. Okay, let's see. One of the leading causes of water pollution is heavy metal contamination, which has profound adverse effects on human health and the environment. That's why Clarkson University researchers have developed a cost-effective 3D printing technology to create sustainable bio-based absorbents that can effectively remove toxic heavy metal ions from contaminated environments. The 3D printing technique offers a cost effective, scalable, and simple approach to creating tunable absorbents for environmental remediation that can be used broadly by the community for environmental remediation and sensing application. The work performed in the laboratory of Professor Silviana Andresu, the Egon Mitsubishi Chair in Chemistry was recently featured on the front cover page of the journal Environmental Science Advances. Nadia Chang, a biomolecular science undergraduate, and the two chemistry graduate students, Abraham S. Finney and Olveston Pupola, were involved in the project. Nadia started her work on this project as a senior in high school and then as a Clarkson School student. Our work demonstrated unique capability of green and sustainable materials to be ad- additively manufactured and designed so that they have the ability to capture and remove toxic contaminants, providing innovative solutions for next generation detection and remediation technologies. This work contributes to the development of material and method for environmental monitoring and cleanup to achieve the global WHO goals for clean and sustainable water, said Professor Andrews. Abraham S. Finney, PhD, a senior scientist at Waters Corporation and former member of Professor Andrews Lab, exposure to such innovative application focused and cutting edge scientific research at Clarkson makes Clarkson graduate excellent problem solvers who go on to become impactful leaders tackling global challenges. Another reason why employers find Clarkson graduate highly attractive. Okay. Okay, so providing the results on the 3D printing eco-friendly absorbents for heavy metal ion removal. So yep, I mean it's going very useful in the many industries, in the manufacturing or in the metal industry, of course, uh, in the production itself, and in many other things. So yep, I mean great man. Moving on towards next topic. With seemingly endless data storage at our fingerprints, digital hoarding could be an increasing problem. Okay, let's see. As data storage has become a more accessible than ever, that amount of digital stuff we all have stashed away is on the rise too for many of us. It's becoming more unwindly by the day. In a recent paper published in the journal Information and Management, we have investigated a rising phenomenon called digital hoarding, the team to acquire and hold onto digital content without an intended purpose. The way we interact with the digital content through easily available smartphones, social media, and messaging apps only exer- uh, exacerbates the behavior. Social media platforms especially encourage us to hoard as our emotions get entangled with the digital contents we share with others, such as photos with lots of shares or likes. If it can take up to 25 or more selfies before seeing a winner, the sheer volume of content creation raises an important question. How do we plan to manage this morsels of data taking clutter into the digital era? Hoarding is defined as a persistent difficulty in discarding one possessions and can be either a disorder on its own, a symptom of another mental health issue such as obsessive compulsive disorder. A person with hoarding disorder experiences distress at the thought of getting rid of the items. They end up with an excessive accumulation of stuff in their home regardless of actual value. We propose that digital hoarding happens when an individual constantly acquires digital content, feels difficult in discarding it, and accumulates digital content without an intended purpose. Digital purpose can quickly spiral out of control to perhaps even more quickly than in the physical world due to several reasons. First, the digital hoarder is less likely to notice the space limitation in the digital world. While the boundaries of a physical space are clear, such boundaries are less prominent in digital spaces. Second, hoarding of physical object happens in fixed boundaries, while digital spaces are expandable. You can get additional digital storage with minimum effort at very little or zero cost. Third, to hoard physical items, a person need to expend some effort, such as purchasing item. By contrast, most digital contents are either self-created, free, or available on a subscription basis. Fourth, compared with physical stuff, digital contents can be multiplied, for example, by making copies with very minimal effort. Of course, overall, having various formats of digital content and endless capacity to expand storage, increasing emotional attachment, and the lack of sophisticated retrieval system may all make an individual nervous to delete this digital content, showing the potential signs of digital hoarding. Defining digital hoarding, we define digital hoarding based on three criteria: constant acquisition of digital content, discarding difficulty, and a propensity for digital content clutter. Constant acquisition refers to the constant gathering of digital content without much consideration of its value, purpose, or utility. Uh, with most communication take place electronically, we tend to keep any and all digital content without discrimination, just in case. This includes emails, images, videos, bills, and receipts. In our research sample, some people have gathered more than 40 terabytes TB of digital content over time. Acquisition refers not just to photons you have in storage device, for instance, but also once uploaded to social media. Difficulty of discarding digital content is the second characteristic of digital hoarding. Think about the last time you meticulously deleted old emails. For example, theoretically, an individual with compulsive hoarding disorder tend to place high value on the contents they have, and as a result, they feel great difficulty discarding them. Clutter propensity is the third characteristic of digital hoarding. It refers to how abducting digital contents, often unrelated, are stored in disordered fashion. As most digital contents can be stored in any digital device, individuals tend to save such content without much organization and think they can sort it out later. This often leads to a feeling of being disorganized and cluttered in digital spaces. What can you do to curb digital hoarding? In our survey of 846 respondents representing the general population, we found that digital hoarding can lead to higher levels of anxiety. Statistically, 37% of one total level of anxiety, measured using a established depression, anxiety, and stress scale, was explained by digital hoarding. Our research also showed female are 27% more likely to feel the negative impact of digital hoarding compared with their male counterparts. Not surprisingly, the number of data storage devices someone owned worsened the impact of digital hoarding. For example, if someone owns multiple hard drives or cloud storage, digital hoarding impacts can increase. In the modern world, it is inevitable that digital content plays an important role in our lives. Therefore, the potential of serious mental health impacts from digital hoarding is a real possibility. If you think you are holding on to too much digital content, here are some tips. Consider doing a spring clean every year and schedule a time to spring clean your digital footprint. Reduce unnecessary digital content. come up with simple mechanism to organize your files, emails, pictures, and videos. Re-accesses the importance of many social networks, including groups, in many communication apps, and retain only those essential to you, of course. However, if you find this issue particularly difficult or confronting, consider speaking to your doctor or mental health specialist. Hmm. So, yep. I mean, so yeah, it's a great, not it's a not a great. It's a difficult for everyone or the AI to convert or organize those things. So, yep. Uh, many of the companies just store the data for own beneficial, but still we need to have some kind of storage in them. So yeah, yeah. Okay, moving on towards next topic. Sustainable concrete cuts emission and use waste for better buildings. Okay, let's see. And an international research group is building a case for more sustainable concrete by replacing synthetic reinforcement material with natural fibers and material from different waste streams. The latest Flinders University led study with experts from the US and Turkey demonstrates how geopolymers reinforced with renewable and natural fibers and made with industrial byproducts and waste based sands from lead smelting or glass making can match the strength, durability, and drying shrinkage qualities of those containing natural sand, which in turn consumes more raw resources and generates extra emission in its processing. Conventional concrete is the most widely used construction material with 25 billion tons used every year. It consumes about 30% of non renewable natural resources, emitting about 8% of atmospheric greenhouse gases and comprising up to 50% of landfill. Lead researcher Flinders University Civil and Structural Engineering Research Dr. Ali Alia Akbar Gola Ampod says the promising findings have significant potential for the use of natural fibers in the development of structural grade construction materials in which binder and aggregate are placed by individual byproducts and waste based materials. Test results show that geopolymers using waste glass and exhibit superior strength and lower water absorption than those containing natural river and wild laid smelter slag LSS based geopolymers have lower drying shrinkage compared to geopolymers prepared with natural river sand. Natural fibers such as rami, sisal, hemp, coir, jute, and bamboo, but also incorporated in testing experiments. The geopolymers containing 1% rami, hemp, and bamboo fiber and 2% rami fiber exhibit higher compressive and tensile strength and a lower drying shrinkage than unreinforced geopolymer, while those containing 1% rami fiber have the highest strength and lowest drying shrinkage. The new Australian led study published in the Construction and Building Materials adds to global efforts tackling the environmental impact of producing conventional building materials and waste to landfill volumes. With concrete, we can not only recycle huge volume of industrial byproducts and waste material, including concrete aggregates, to improve the mechanical and durability properties of concrete, but also use alternative eco-friendly natural fibers which otherwise would not be used constructively, says Dr. Gola, Gola Lampord. This research will also look to design mixes of recycled cores, aggregates, and other types of cellulosic fibers, including water vapor, for different construction and building applications. We also plan to investigate their application in construction, 3D printing for the future. Hmm, of course. Moving on towards next topic, mapping human brain development. Okay, let's see. The human brain is probably the most complex organ in the entire living world and has long been an object of fascination for researchers. Okay. However, studying the brain, especially the genes and molecular switches that regulates and directs its development, is no easy task. To date, scientists have proceeded using animal models, primarily mice, of course, but their findings cannot be transferred directly to humans. Okay. A mouse brain is structured differently and lacks the furrowed surface typical of the human brain. Cell structure has thus far been of limited value in this field. A cell as such tends to spread over a large area when grown uh, on a culture dish. This does not correspond to the natural three-dimensional structure of the brain. Mapping molecular fingerprints, a group of researchers led by Barbara Truntlen, ETH professor at the Department of Biosystem Science and Engineering in Basel, has now taken a new approach to studying the development of the human brain. They are growing and using organoids, multimeter, millimeter sized three-dimensional tissues that can be grown from what are known as pluripotent stem cells. Okay. Provided these stem cells receive the right stimulus, researcher can program them to become any kind of cell present in the body, including neurons. When the stem cells are aggregated into a small a ball of tissue and then exposed to the appropriate stimulus, they can even self-organize and form a three-dimensional brain or organoid with the complex tissue architecture. In a new study just published in Nature, and her colleagues have now studied thousands of individual cells without a brain organoid at various points in time and in great detail. Their goal was to characterize the cells in the molecular genetic terms, in other words, the totality of all gene transcriptome as a measure of gene expression, but also the accessibility of the genome as a measure of regularity activity. They have managed to represent this data as a kind of map showing the molecular fingerprint of each cell within the organoid. However, this procedure generates immense data sets. Each cell in the organoid has 20 20,000 genes, and each organoid in turn consists of many thousands of cells. This results in a gigantic matrix, and the only way we can solve it is with the help of suitable programs and machine learning, explained Jonas Fleck, a doctoral student in the Turtlen groups and one of the study co-lead author. To analyze all this data and predict gene regulation mechanisms, the researcher developed their own program. We can use it to generate an entire interaction network for each individual gene and predict what will happen in real cells what when the gene fails, Fleck says. Identifying genetic switches. The aim of this study was to systematically identify those genetic switches that have a significant impact on the development of neurons in the different regions of brain organoids. With the help of CRISPR Cas9 system, the researcher selectively switched off one gene in each cell. Altogether, about 2 dozen genes simultaneously in the entire organoid. This enabled them to find out what role the respective genes played in the development of the brain organoid. This technique can be used to screen genes involved in disease. In addition, we can look at the effect these genes have on how different cells within the organoid develop, explains Sophie Jensen, also a doctoral student in Turton Group and the second co-lead author of the study, checking pattern formation in the forebrain. To test this theory, the researchers choose the GLI3 gene as an example. This gene is the blueprint of the transcription factor. Of the same time, a protein that docks onto certain sites on DNA in order to regulate another gene. When GLI3 is switched off, The cellular machinery is prevented from reading this gene and transcribing it into an RNA molecule. In mice, mutation in the GLI3 gene can lead to malformation in the central nervous system. Its role is human neuronal development was previously unexplored, but it is known that mutation in the gene lead to diseases such as Greg cephalo polysyndactyly and Pallister Hall syndromes. Silencing this GLI3 gene enabled the researcher both to verify their theoretical prediction and to determine directly in the cell culture how the loss of the gene affected the brain organoid for further development. We have shown for the first time that the GLI3 gene is involved in the formation of four brain patterns in humans. This had previously been shown only in mice. Trutland says model system reflect developmental biology. The exciting thing about this research is that it lets you use genome-wide data from so many individual cells to postulate who roles individual genes play. She explains what's equally exciting in my opinion, is that these model system made in a petri dish really do reflect developmental biology as we know it from mice. Trutland also finds it fascinating how the culture medium can give rise to self-organized tissue with structure comparable to those of the human brain, not only at the morphological level but also, as the researchers have shown in their latest study, at the level of gene regulation and pattern formation. Organoids like this are truly an excellent way to study human development biology, she points out. Okay, versatile brain organoids. Of course, research and organoids made up of human cell material has the advantage that the findings are transferable to humans. They can be used to study not only basic development biology but also the role of the genes in diseases or developmental brain disorders. For example, Trutland and her colleagues are working with organoids of this type to investigate the genetic cause of autism and of heterotopia. In this latter, neurons appear outside their usual anatomic location in the cerebral cortex. Organoids may also be used for testing drugs and possibly for culturing transportable organs or organ parts. Tretland confirmed that the pharmaceutical industry is very interested in these cell cultures. However, growing organoids takes both time and effort. Moreover, each clump of cells develops individual rather than in the standardized way. That is why Trudland and her team are working to improve the organoids and automate their manufacturing process. So these are the things. These are the how uh, basically researcher mapping the human brain development and how this thing works in this industry. Of course, it's a neuroscience topic. So yep, yeah. Moving on towards next topic. Other SARS-CoV-2 proteins are important for disease severity aside from the spike. Okay, let's see. University of Maryland School of Medicine researchers have identified how multiple genes of SARS-CoV-2 affect disease severity, which could lead to new ways in how we develop future vaccines or develop newer treatment. The genes control the immune system of the host, contributing to how fiercely the body responds to COVID-19 infection. Although people typically think of the spike protein that forms the structural ground as the driving factor behind each new variant of COVID-19, research finding also shows that mutation in other accessory genes also plays a role in how the disease progresses. Because of this, researchers believe these accessory proteins warrant further study as their mutation increasing may become more significant as newer variants arise. Their finding were published in the proceeding of the National Academy of Science. The BA4 variant of Omicron, which is calculated earlier this year, was overtaken by the latest BA5 variant of the virus calculating now, but both of these variants seems to evade the immune system due to mutation in the spike protein. Because of the spike mutation, the researcher says the previous vaccines are not an effective in preventing disease. What is the interesting is that both BA4 and BA5 variants have the same genetic sequence for the spike protein, said Matthew Freeman, PhD Alicia Yaya Foundation Professor of Viral Pathogen Research in the development of microbiology and immunology at UMSOM. This means it's the other genes, the non-spike proteins genes that seem to affect the way the virus copies itself and cause diseases. So mutation in these other accessory genes are what has allowed variants like BA5 to outcompete the earlier version of the virus. The SARS-CoV-2 virus has three kinds of genes: those involved in making more copies of the virus, those that make the virus structure, and accessory genes that have other function. For this new study, the researcher wanted to find out the function of the accessory genes. To do this, they recreated viruses missing each of four accessory proteins and then infected mice with these new virus of the original virus. Next, they observed how each virus affected the mice. Dr. Freeman team of researchers found that virus missing the ORF3A AB gene lead to a more mild infections than the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. The mice with this virus strain lost less weight and had less virus in their lungs than mice infected with the original virus. These findings indicate that the ORF3AB A/B gene likely plays a role in either making more copies of the virus through viral replication or blocking the immune response to the infection. Other experiments suggested ORF3A/B has an extra job in the virus by seeming to activate the body innate immune system, the first lines of defense launched by the immune system, signaling that a foreign invader needs to be vanquished. In contrast, the researcher found that mice infected with the virus missing the ORF8 gene were sicker than mice with the original strain of SARS-CoV-2. These mice had increased inflammation in their lungs when compared with the original SARS-CoV-2 virus. The researcher said that ORF8 seems to control the immune response in the lungs. By inhibiting the immune response, ORF8 helps the virus to replicate more in the lungs, which worsens infection. When removed, it allows the immune system to fight back harder, said Dr. Freeman. Next, the researcher looked at how important the spike protein was for disease severity in each of the different variants of SARS-CoV-2. They took the original virus and swapped out the spike gene with the spike gene of either the alpha, beta, gamma, or delta variant. Then they infected cells and mice and observed how each of these viruses replicated and entered healthy cells. The virus used the spike protein HK on the host ACE2 receptor found on the outside of cells lining the lungs as a way to get inside and infect cells. Dr. Friedman teams found that the spike protein determined the similarity of some of the variants but not for others. The gamma variant was weaker than the other variant in its ability to replicate and infect. The researchers think the mutation in genes outside of the spike, particularly in the ORF8 gene, seems to play a role in making this version weaker than the others. Although the gamma variant circulated in Brazil, it did not spread further around the globe, and as it is overtaken by stronger variants. While the spike mutations are important for enhancing receptor binding and entry into cells, the researchers also found that the mutation is in the accessory proteins can alter clinical disease presentation, said Dr. Mark T. Geldwin, MD, Vice President of Medical Affairs at the University of Maryland, Baltimore, and the John Z. and Akikio K. Bowers, Distinguished Professor and Dean U.M. Som. We need to learn more about the role of accessory protein mutation in COVID 19 infection, especially as new variants and subvariants keep emerging where these other proteins may play more of a steering role. The researchers plan to focus on dissecting more of ORF8 function in future studies. So, okay, I guess there is no need of explanation because it's well described by the author itself. So, moving on towards next topic. Rugby players face highly increased MND risk disease study. Okay. Rugby chief must take urgent action to reduce head injuries after a study indicated that former international players are 15 times more likely to develop motor neuron disease, researchers said Tuesday. Academics who studied a cohort of former Scottish international found that overall the ex-players were about 2.5 times more likely to develop neurodegenerative disease than expected compared to members of the general population. Multiple studies have shown a link between brain injuries and an increased risk of developing neurodegenerative disease, and that ex-professional athletes are at an increased risk of the developing such condition. As a concern grow, a group of former players has decided to sue various governing bodies for allegedly failing to protect them from permanent injury. In the latest research, a team led by the University of Glasgow compared the health outcomes among 412 male Scottish former international rugby players with over 1200 matched individuals from the general population. The result, published in the Journal of Neurology and Neurosurgery and Psychiatry, showed that the while age at death was slightly higher among former players, they were also at higher risk of neurodegenerative disease diagnosis compared to their matched controls. The risk varies by subtype but not by player position, as well as the higher risk of developing motor neuron disease. The risk of Parkinson disease is 3 times greater. This study provides further insight into the association between contact sports and neurodegenerative disease risk, said Glasgow consultant neuropathologist Whaley Stewart, who lead the research team. Of particular concern are the data on motor neurons disease risk among our rugby players, which is even higher than that of former professional footballers. This finding requires immediate research attention. The Motor Neuron Disease Association says the disease affects up to 5,000 adults in the UK at any one time, with a 1 in 300 risk of getting MND across a lifetime. The researchers said the paper's findings echo those of previous studies of former professional footballer players and American footballer players, but point out most of the rugby players studied were amateurs playing before the sport turned professional in 1995. They said they showed the risks were not confined to professional athletes. Professional risk, Stewart, whose previous research showed ex-professional footballers had a significantly higher risk of dying from neurodegenerative disease than the general population, said he was concerned that rugby players face even more risk in the professional era with an increasing number of matches being played. Rugby has talked a lot and is doing a lot about head injury management and talking about whether it can reduce impact exposure during the week. He said, "I think those conversation have gone on a while and the pace of the progress is pretty slow." He added, instead of talking about extending seasons and introducing new competitions and global seasons, they should be talking about the restricting it as much as possible, cutting back on the amount of rugby we are seeing and getting rid of as much training as possible. Stewart said rapid strides had been made in American football, highlighting the reduction in contract training. I think rugby could be speeding up the pace of change. He said, I know it's tough to think of about there being less rugby rather than more, but maybe less is more. Maybe you get a better quality product if the players are less damaged and filtered rather than developing depending purely on quantity. So I think rugby has to think about it. You can't continue to put young men and women through what they have been through. Now we know from the amateur era there's the risk of brain disease. Motor Neuron Disease Association Director of Research Development Brian Dickey welcomed the report but said research needed to be extended into much larger population. We know that the vast majority of cases of MND involve a complex mix of genetic and environmental risk factors, so the level of genetic risk may be different in high performance athletes compared with general population, he said. Of course. So these are the challenges faced by the rugby players in the United States and many other regions where the rugby is played. Well, so yep. Moving on towards next topic. China imposes lockdown as COVID-19 surges after holiday. Okay, let's see. Chinese cities were imposing fresh lockdowns and travel restrictions after the number of new daily COVID 19 cases tripled during a week long holiday ahead of a major Communist Party meeting in the Beijing next week. Okay. The latest lockdown started on Monday in Fengyang city in northern China's Shanxi province after a preliminary positive case was found in citywide testing the previous day, state broadcaster CCTV reported. In the nearly inner Mongolia, Mongolia region, the capital Hohhot announced that outside vehicles and the passenger would be prohibited from entering the city starting Tuesday. Hohhot has recorded more than 2,000 cases over about 12 days. China is one of the few places in the world still resorting to harsh measures to keep the disease from spreading. The long ruling Communist Party is particularly concerned as it tries to present a positive image of the nation in the run up to a once in a 5 years party congress that starts Sunday. Travel was down during an annual National Day holiday that began October 1st as authorities discouraged from leaving their cities and province, but the number of new daily cases has still grown to about 1800 from 600 at the start of the break. Leaders don't want a major outbreak to cause a pile over the Congress, but their strict zero COVID approach has taken an economic toll, particularly on small businesses and temporary workers. Many in China hope the pandemic policy will ease after the meeting. Outbreaks have been reported across the country, with the largest in the inner Mongolia and the far west Xinjiang region. Both have been recording several hundred new cases a day. Both Shanghai, where residents endured prolonged lockdowns earlier this year, and the national capital Beijing have had a small but growing number of cases. Two Shanghai district announced closure of cinemas and other entertainment venues on Monday, lining up for a few virus tests several times a week has become the norm for many Chinese, with Beijing and other cities requiring a negative test result within 72 hours to enter parks, office buildings, shops, and other public places. Okay, moving on towards next news. Vanderbilt to review gender affirming surgeries for minors. Okay, let's see. Officials at Vanderbilt University Medical Center announced Friday that they are pausing gender affirming surgeries for minors in order to review their practices. The news, delivered in a letter sent to a lawmaker who has a who has demanded an end up to the surgeries, was publicly released Friday afternoon. It comes amid a mounting political pressure from Republican leaders, many of whom are running for re-election, who called for an investigation into the private non-profit hospital after videos surfaced on social media last month of a doctor touting the gender affirming procedure are huge money makers. Another video showed a staffer saying anyone with a religious objection should quit. None of the politicians could point to a specific law that the hospital had violated, and no agency to date has committed to an investigation. Republican government bill Lee office said they had passed their concern to the Attorney General Jonathan Scrimty, and but his office has not commented on whether he is looking into the Nashville-based hospital. We are pausing gender affirmation surgeries on patients under age 18 while we complete this review, which may take several months, wrote C. Wright Pinson, WMC Deputy CEO and Chief Health System Officer. The GOP dominated legislature is scheduled to recommence in January, and many lawmakers have vowed to introduce legislation further limit a gender affirming treatment. If successful, it's unclear if mm, BUMC would be allowed to resume gender affirming surgery for minors regardless of the internal review. We should not we should not allow permanent life altering decision that hurt children. Lee tweeted late Friday. With the partnership of the General Assembly, this practice should end in tennis. Okay, according to Pinson, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health recently changed its recommendation for transgender treatment, which helped prompt the need for a review. On average, VUMC has provided 5 gender affirming surgeries to minors every year since its transgender clinic opened in 2018. All were over the age of 16 and had parental consent, and none received genital procedure. The revenue from this limited number of surgery represent an immaterial percentage of uh, BUMC net operating revenue. Pinson wrote emails provided to the Associated Press through public records requests show hundreds of tennises reached out to the governor office in supporting of shutting down VUMC transgender youth health clinic, with some asking him to call a special legislative session to address the issue. Others asked if he could suspend the license of the doctor who worked at the clinic. A few uh, cris- uh, criticized criticized Lee for not taking harsh steps earlier when he signed legislation banning doctors from providing gender conforming hormone treatment to prepubescent minors. Only a handful defended the clinic service, with some saying transgender healthcare they received had been life saving. Of course, these are the. Okay, moving on towards next topic, and the last topic of the podcast. Yes, it's going not going to be the topic. It's going to be the news. So yep, firearms violence prevention demands a public safety approach like regulation of motor vehicles. Okay, let's see. Each day, 28 US children and teens, the equivalent of a high school classroom, die from gun violence, making it the number one killer of youth through age 24. The national death rate is significantly higher than all other high income countries combined, largely due to an alarming increase in suicides and homicides that do not make national headlines. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Pediatrics calls for tackling this public health emergency with an harm reduction approach using tactics that have successfully resulted in a decrease in motor vehicle related injuries and deaths. The app offers recommendation within an updated policy statement firearm related injuries and death in children and youth, injury prevention and harm reduction, which with an accompanying technical report will be published during the 2022 ARP National Conference and Exhibition in Aneurysm, California on October 8. Okay. This is not a simple problem and it cannot be fixed with a simple solution, said lead author Lee, MD, MPH, FAB, chair of the ARP Council on Injury, Violence and Poison Prevention, who wrote the reports. Pedri- uh, Pediatricians as a start can offer families guidance and education on more safety storing guns. ARP also calls for supporting legislation that might like the common sense requirements for obtaining a driver license would improve gun ownership safety. Okay. Over the past decade, rates of homicides and suicide from firearms in US youth, especially those ages 15 to 24 years, have increased by 14% 39% respectively. Among all used firearms deaths, homicides account for 58%, suicides account for 37%, 2% are unintentional, and legal intervention accounts for 1%. About 85% of firearm deaths in children ages 12 and younger occurred in the home. Teenagers 13-17 are equally likely to be killed at home, 29%, or on the street sidewalk, 38%, according to the research based on 2014 data. Many tragedies escape public attention because they occurred in a home, sometimes in a own home, or at a friend's house, or their neighbor or grandparents' residence, said Eric W. Fligdor, MD, FAP, a co-author of both reports. Research tell us the families tend to underestimate how children will behave when they encounter a gun and miscalculate the risk. Suicide risks are also a huge concern, especially in families where teens are struggling with their mental health. ARP recommends action at the local, state, and federal level that includes firearm anticipatory guidance and lethal means counseling, mental health screenings, and safe gun storage education provided by clinicians as a part of routine patient visits, increased funding for violence intervention program at hospital and community settings. Regulations of firearms are regulated for safety like other consumer products, including motor vehicles. National requirement could be established for training, licensing, insurance coverage, and registration of individual purchasing firearms, and requirements for safe storage. Firearm safety design and regulation with advocacy for the design and sale of affordable, personalized smart gun and safety technology, which allow only authorized users to pull the trigger on the firearm. Legislation that includes universal background checks using both federal databases and information from local law enforcement before all firearm purchases. Legislation encouraging the safe storage of firearms, extreme risk of protection order ERPO laws, also known as red flag laws, that prohibit individuals at risk of harming themselves or other from purchasing or owning a firearm by a court order. More funding for firearm injury and prevention research. Research and publication addressing firearm related injuries, deaths, and intervention has lagged far behind other areas of study and impeded the ability to apply evidence based approaches to decrease firearm injuries and death in the US children and youth. We can't afford to stand by and watch as more children and communities are traumatized by the firearm violence, not only from what they experience firsthand, but what they see and hear about in their neighborhoods and in the US at large. Dr. Lee said, as a nation, we are judged by how we can care for our children, and so we must act on now to turn around the tide of increasing firearm violence to our kids. Okay, of course. Okay, I guess there's no need for explanation, so I'm ending this podcast with the note: keep researching, stay curious, stay healthy.